Welcome back to Braid's Woodturning. I tell you what, this is one area that you really need to focus in on if you're a beginning turning, just thinking about it. If you want to buy a lathe, purchase a lathe, this will help you. I'm going to break down two different types of lathes out there. We're going to talk about a belt-driven lathe. We're going to talk about variable speed lathes. It'll help you making your decision on what lathe you want to buy. So let's get started. Over here to a mini lathe, and the mini lathe is one of the smallest of the lathes. There's actually three different categories. There's the mini, the midi, and then the full-size lathes. When we're looking at a lathe, we want to focus on what the swing is. And what I mean by a swing is the distance between the bed and the spindle. Okay, and this one here is 10 inch. So you got a 10-inch swing, so it's be 5 inches from the bed to the center axis. This is a belt-driven lathe. It's not variable speed where you twist a dial. And what I mean by variable speed, the first thing you want to do anytime you're changing a belt on any power equipment in your shop is unplug it. This is part of lockout tagout. In the engineering world, always kill the power, because I know of people who have actually cut fingers off because they didn't change the power. The machine could come on for whatever reason, had a short in it, and you don't want your fingers to get caught in there. So always unplug it, kill the power. There's no way that this thing can come on. This is a belt-driven lathe, and you can see here, if you'll zero in right here, that it's got a different pulleys in there, and it gives you a speed range from 430 RPMs all the way up to 3,900 RPMs. So that's clipping along pretty good. So we're going to usually start somewhere in between those numbers, and it's got the segments of the pulleys, so you can line it up on here and move your belt accordingly. How you change the belt, you would just loosen it up, take the tension off of it, tighten it back up, and let's say we want to go up one notch, we'd move it over one pulley down here in the bottom. And I know you can't see that part, but we can up there. So I'm on the let's say the third pulley. So I want to get on the third pulley. 1, 2, 3. I got it lined up. Let the tension back down on it. Always spin it to make sure your belt's tracking right, and then you tighten it back up. And we're on that third pulley, and that is D and K. So you come over here and let's see, what was it? K and D, and we'll be turning about 1,200 RPMs. So this is a belt-driven lathe. This is a small one. This is one that I would use on demos and stuff away from the shop. I can pick it up and take it with me. Let's go over to a bigger lathe and talk about the variable speed, and I'll break down the components of this lathe on the bigger lathe. Let's go. Okay, we're over here to a variable speed lathe. This is a Powermatic, and this is a 20-inch lathe. Got a 20-inch swing, so that means there's 10 inches between here and the center axis, which would give me a 20-inch swing. That is important if on the large size bows that you want to turn. Variable speed lathes are something that has a digital readout. You can look right here. There'll be a digital readout. And you got your power button right here, and it would be on. And we've got a switch down here. I can shut it completely off. I love that because I can go from 0 up to about 3,600 RPMs just like that. So I can turn it on, and you can see that it's building up RPMs, and I'm reading 1,700 RPMs. It's very easy. It's not like changing a belt. Now, one thing that this does have, it does have a belt. It's called a high and a low, and this is the power that the low will go from 50 to 1,200 RPMs, and the high is from 125 to 3,200 RPMs. And if you look inside here, you got your belt in here, and again, if you're going to change these belts from high to low, you want to unplug it, make sure that this thing can't come on. And then you kind of take the tension off the belt and you move the belt. I pretty much leave it where it's at. I'm always on the high spot. It starts out at 125 RPMs. If I just wanted to creep a little bit slower, then I would switch it over. But this does fine, and I never have changed this. Maybe one time, just playing with it. This lathe here has a hand wheel back here, and if we can zero in on it, most lathes do have a hand wheel, and that's on the back side, which it has a hole going through it, and which comes with a knockout bar. This knockout bar is how you would get your spurs out, and we'll talk about a spur, and that would knock it out. Here is a two-bladed spur. This two-bladed spur has a number 2 taper. A number 2 taper is standard to the industry. You're going to find there's some lathes out there, especially some older lathes, that might have a number 1 taper. The worst thing about the number 1 tapers is that it's hard to get some of the accessories that you may need down the road. So if you can, buy something with a number 2 taper. There is another taper that is a number 3 taper, and that's pretty much for industrial work. Lathes big enough to turn a porch column. This number 2 taper will fit into the spindle here, and this spindle is 1.25 inches with 8 threads per inch. And why would you need to know that? Well, the reason why you need to know that is because if you wanted to buy a chuck, and here is a chuck. This is a self-centering chuck. This has got a key on it, and you would actually put this in here, and it open and close these chucks, and this chuck would fit on to them threads right there. I always buy a chuck that you have to buy the insert to go in the back. Let me give you an example. If I wanted to use this chuck on that little lathe that we just talked about over there, all I have to do is buy a different insert, which would be a 1-inch 8 on that one. It's a little bit smaller spindle, but I can use the same chuck on both lathes. All I have to do is have an extra insert that goes in the back of it. They do sell these chucks where you can just screw it onto your lathe with that thread size. But then if you upgrade your lathe and get you a bigger lathe, you're going to have to buy a different chuck because it's not going to fit. So it's always best to buy one that has the insert in the middle. Let me set this aside, and we're going to talk about this is a headstock. This is what drives everything. The other lathe was, of course, a belt-driven lathe, and this is variable speed. I've already talked about that. On the headstock, it will slide up and down this bed. I can slide this headstock all the way down and turn off the end if I wanted to turn a real bigger bow. There is a few accessories that I would need to buy for that, as maybe a floor stand, tool rest, and stuff like that. This right here, this lever right here, is called the this is the banjo. This slides in and out. It slides the piece up close to your work. This right here is a tool rest. This is a 12-inch tool rest. This is a 6-inch tool rest. Take this out of the way. This is called a live center. When I first started turning, back when I was 13 years old, I turned on a lathe in my dad's shop. They had what they call a dead center, and we had to put paraffin on it so the wood wouldn't catch a fire because it didn't have a ball bearing in there. And these were called live centers, and it actually spins as the wood's turning. You're going to see here a term called mounting between centers, turning between centers. And what that means is turning between the spur and the live center. Now this spur right here is a little bit different than what comes with the lathe. What comes with the lathe is a 4-bladed spur. This 4-bladed spur is great for hardwood, dry wood, stuff like that. And this spur is what actually drives that piece of wood. Why would I use a 2-bladed spur with spurs this long? You can see the difference in the size, difference in the length of the spur. And the reason why is because this is what I use on green wood. I can embed this deep into that wood, and I don't have to worry about it spinning out. Let's say you got a catch on a piece of wood. This would spin out and you'd have to reseat it. So this just makes it a whole lot simpler for that wet wood, because that wet wood is a whole lot softer. You're putting this down into the camber layers of that wood. You haven't even got to the heartwood yet. So this is a must, I think, in green wood turning. The next thing I want to talk about, we talked about the banjo. We want to talk about this tailstock. I got a couple little live centers in here. I got one that's got a cup on it, and I'll show you down the road why we use that. This has got a lockdown for your quill that goes back and forth. It's got a handle right here. You loosen it up and you can tighten this up. Got a lever right here that you slide this back and forth on the bed. Of course, this being the bed of the lathe. One thing I want to talk about as far as ergonomics of this lathe is that when you set your lathe up and you go out here and you want to get a certain height of this lathe, you got some people pretty tall, and then you got some people shorter than I am. I'm about 5'9", and so I've actually put a 1-inch mat. If we zero in on this mat, you can see it. This is a 1-inch mat because I needed to raise myself up a little bit for this reason right here. For this reason is right because my elbow needs to be at the center axis for us to be ergonomically stable to be able to turn. I don't want to be too low, because if I'm turning and I'm too low, I'm going to be up on my tiptoes all the time trying to reach. Okay, if it's if it's too high, it's going to be the opposite way. So you don't want to be standing up or bending over. If this thing's really down low, man, your back's going to be hurting after a couple hours of turning. So get that ergonomics right of that lathe, the center axis at your elbow when you're setting your lathe up. You'll appreciate it down the road. There's a lot of components on here. There's a little anchor pin back here that keeps this tailstock from sliding off. I can slide this all the way down and it would hit that little pin down there and keep it from falling off in the floor. So that's a good little safety thing so you don't tear your tailstock up. Of course, it's got a lockdown right here on the quill, and once you get this thing locked into the wood, you want to lock it down right here. And you always check this. You never want that quill to back out and a piece of wood maybe come off, because that's what this is for. This is safety. Of course, I always put a light. This one here, it's a two-bladed light. I love the two blades because I can position a couple of different spots on the lathe. A lot of your lathes you can buy, one light. Where this one come from is this for fly tying. And I bought this at a fly fishing show. And I said, man, that would be great on top of my lathe. And it give me two light sources coming into my piece of wood. One thing you want to do is always be able to see what you're doing. So this is a really good source for that. And I like the one with the two lights on it. If there's any questions, shoot me a comment and I'll be glad to answer them. If I don't know the answer, we'll find out what it is. So let's go back over to the stove and we'll close this video out. Okay, we were talking about the lathes, belt-driven lathe versus variable speed lathes, twist of a dial. There's a couple of lathes out there that have a lever that you can change back and forth. All of them are really good lathes. One thing I want to really encourage you to do is that if you're going out to buy a lathe that the biggest lathe that your budget will afford. That's what I can say. If it's a smaller lathe, belt driven, and that's all you can afford, then that's where you need to be. But if you can step up a little bit and buy a little bit bigger lathe down the road, it might keep you from rebuying a lathe down the road. So hope you got something out of this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Like and subscribe. Okay, quick note here. I had taught wood turning classes at the Woodcraft store for several years, and what I've got going on here, just to explain a little bit about the video and the sequence that I'm going in, is that every little segment was part of my class at Woodcraft. So you're going to see different segments going all the way through this, and every one of these videos is something that I had covered in class. I've got a lot of students out there. Thank you, and we'll see you later.